Windows. Right now, as you watch this, about 62 out of every 100 desktop computers on Earth are running Windows. Not because it's the best, because in 1985, Microsoft made one ruthless decision. Get their operating system pre-installed on everyone's machine before anyone thought to ask if there was an alternative. An operating system is just the layer between you and the machine. You click a folder, the OS talks to the processor, the memory, and the disk, and makes it happen, so you never have to think in ones and zeros. Windows became the default one for the entire planet. Microsoft's grip is so total that when they killed off Windows 10 in October 2025, hundreds of millions of still working PCs were suddenly declared unsafe overnight. A soft nudge to go buy Windows 11, which now runs on about 70% of all Windows machines. For gamers, office workers, and anyone who's ever printed a boarding pass, Windows is the OS you use because everything is built for it first. It's not the smartest one on this list. It's just the one that won, macOS. If Windows is the OS that came with your work, macOS is the one people buy on purpose and then won't stop telling you about. Apple's operating system runs on roughly 14% of desktops, but that number hides the real story. It only runs on Apple's own hardware. Microsoft licenses Windows to anyone. Apple refuses. macOS lives exclusively on Macs, which is exactly how Apple keeps everything feeling smooth. They control the software and the machine it runs on. Under the hood, macOS is secretly built on Unix, the same 1970s foundation that powers a huge chunk of the internet's servers, which is why programmers love it. You get a friendly, polished desktop on top and a real, powerful command line underneath. The catch is the walled garden. Everything works beautifully as long as you stay inside Apple's world. Mac, iPhone, iPad, AirPods, all talking to each other instantly. Step outside it and things get awkward fast. For creatives, developers, and people who value it just works over I can customize everything, macOS is the trade. Less freedom, fewer headaches, Linux. Here's the OS that most people have never installed, yet every single person watching this uses hundreds of times a day without knowing it. Linux isn't really one operating system, it's a free, open source core that anyone can build on. And build on it, they did. Linux runs over 90% of the world's servers, nearly all of the top 500 supercomputers, most of the cloud, smart TVs, cars, routers, and the Mars helicopter. Every time you open a website, a Linux machine somewhere answered you. It comes in flavors called distributions: Ubuntu, Debian, Mint, Arch, each a different personality bolted onto the same engine. And it costs exactly nothing, forever, with no company watching over your shoulder. Linux was started in 1991 by a Finnish student, Linus Torvalds, who basically gave it away, and a global army of volunteers has been improving it for free ever since. The downside? On the desktop, it's still only about 3% because it asks you to learn a little more than clicking next. But for developers, tinkerers, and anyone who wants to actually own their computer instead of renting it, Linux is the one that runs the world from the shadows. Android. Quick trivia. What's the single most popular operating system on the planet? It's not Windows. It's this one. Android runs on over 3 billion active devices, more than any other OS in history. And here's the twist. Android is Linux. Google took that free open source core, wrapped a touchscreen interface around it, and put it in everyone's pocket. So the OS that nobody uses from item 3 is secretly the most used software on Earth. Because it's open, every phone maker, Samsung, Xiaomi, OnePlus, takes Android and slaps their own skin on top. That's why two Android phones can look completely different while running the same thing underneath. The trade-off is fragmentation and tracking. With thousands of device models, updates arrive slowly and unevenly, and since it's Google's, your data is very much part of the deal. But for anyone who wants choice, customization, and a phone at every price from $80 to $1,800, Android is the OS of the whole world outside Apple's walls, iOS. And on the other side of that wall, there's the OS that quietly prints more money than any software ever made. iOS runs only on the iPhone, yet it drives the most profitable product in corporate history. Like macOS, its power comes from lockdown. Apple controls the chip, the OS, and the App Store, so every app is reviewed, sandboxed, and boxed in. That's why iPhones are famously hard to hack and get security updates for half a decade, while Android phones age out in 2 or 3 years. The killer detail is the golden handcuffs, the blue bubble effect, iMessage, AirDrop, the seamless handoff between devices. Apple designed the whole thing so leaving feels like a downgrade. The downside is control. You use your phone the way Apple decides, not the way you decide. Want to install an app from outside the store? Historically, tough luck. But for people who want maximum privacy, long support, and zero decisions to make, iOS is the most locked down, polished OS on this list, a gilded cage that a billion people happily live in. Quick one, what OS are you actually watching this on right now? Windows, Mac, Android, something weird? Drop it in the comments, I want to see the split. And if this is finally making all these names click, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel more than you'd think. Because the last 3 are the ones almost nobody understands, and one of them is what hackers actually use. ChromeOS. Imagine an operating system where the entire computer is basically just a web browser. That's not a joke, that's the whole design. Google's ChromeOS strips everything down to the Chrome browser and the cloud. Your apps are websites, your files live online, and the laptop itself is cheap, light, and nearly impossible to slow down or infect because there's almost nothing on it to break. That simplicity made it a monster in one specific place: schools. Chromebooks dominate classrooms because they're inexpensive, boot in seconds, and a teacher can wipe and reset one in a heartbeat. What happens with no internet? Historically, a Chromebook offline felt a bit like a very expensive coaster, though that's improved with offline apps and Android support baked in. It sits around 1 to 2% of desktops, but for students, schools, and anyone who only really needs a browser, ChromeOS is the OS that asks, what if your computer did less? On purpose. Unix. Here's the OS that technically won everything, because almost every system we've covered is secretly its grandchild. Unix was born in 1969 at Bell Labs, and it introduced the ideas basically every modern OS still uses: files and folders, the command line, small tools that do one job well. macOS is built on it. Linux was inspired by it, Android and iOS trace back to it, the internet grew up on it. Its most famous descendant is BSD, a free branch of Unix that quietly ended up inside macOS, the PlayStation, and huge parts of the network hardware running the web right now. You almost never see Unix, and that's the point. It's the foundation under the foundation, the ancient bedrock that everything else was built on top of. For engineers and history nerds, Unix is the OS that didn't win by being popular, it won by being copied by everyone who came after. Tails. And finally, the operating system designed to leave no trace at all, the one journalists, whistleblowers, and hackers actually reach for. Tails is a Linux-based OS that doesn't install on your computer. It runs entirely from a USB stick, routes all your traffic through the Tor network, and when you pull the stick out and shut down, it forgets everything. No history, no files, nothing left behind. It's amnesia by design. This is the OS Edward Snowden reportedly used to handle the NSA leaks. It exists for exactly one reason: to make you invisible. It's completely free and fits in your pocket, a fully anonymous computer that boots on almost any machine and vanishes without a trace. It's obviously overkill for checking email. But for anyone who needs real anonymity, activists, reporters, the genuinely paranoid, Tails is the operating system built to protect you from everyone, including the machine you're borrowing. So, that's the map. Windows won by being everywhere, Apple won by locking the doors, Linux quietly runs the planet, and a USB stick can make you disappear. Which one surprised you the most? Drop it below. Now here's the thing. We just talked about how Linux secretly runs the world, but there's a whole layer underneath that almost nobody explains. The actual commands hackers type into a Linux terminal to take control of a machine. The ones that sound made up but are completely real. That's exactly what we're breaking down next. Every essential Linux command, explained simply, so the black screen with green text finally makes sense.